once again. Thank you so much for having all of you right here, right now. We're going to start the webinar now. This is the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment webinar that is looking at the Window 1 Digital BDS. And thank you for making time to come and learn more about Window 1. My name is Wamuyo Mahinda. I'm the Pipeline Manager for Challenge Fund for Youth Employment. And you'll be meeting more of my colleagues along the way, and I will introduce them as they come. So this 1 hour that we have ahead of us, we'll be looking at, I'll introduce the program for those who are hearing about it for the first time. And then we'll move to the key observations in Kenya on youth employment and development. And we'll have my colleague Beatrice take us through that. Then we'll be looking at youth aspirations that have been put together by BSO. And our colleague Beatrice, who will be, Helen, sorry, will be looking or taking us through that. Then we'll look at the Window 1, which BDS, digital BDS, that will be taken through by my colleague Malo. So the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment is a fund of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And it's a fund that will be running until 2025. And the implementing partners are Palladium, BSO, and Randstad. And we will be meeting some of the staff, or should I say, members of these organizations that are working with us. The Challenge Fund is looking to support decent jobs of over 200 or 200,000 young people by the time we come to an end in 2025. And of this 200,000, we are looking at 50% of them being women. And this program is currently running in Middle East, North Africa, West Africa, and the Horn of Africa, which includes Kenya and Uganda. We are looking at competitive challenges. And by that, we are looking at youth programs targeting youth between the ages of 15 and 35. And we're also looking at a focus on women, so that the initiatives or should I say the initiatives, yes, that come to us have 50% women, or are thinking of having more than 50% of the women in those initiatives. The fund is offering co-investment of up to 50%, between 10 and 50%. And this includes both direct investment and technical assistance. So the technical assistance will be available from as soon as you're on board after selection, and will go throughout your process of applying until we are done, until the proposal is ready for presentation. And even for those who get through the proposal, there will be technical assistance as they begin their projects and take them to the end. So the total contribution will be 200,000. We're looking at a minimum of 200,000. I see here we've written 100,000, but well, 200,000. And for that, we are looking at a creation of 250 jobs. So that we are looking at, therefore, a total contribution of 200,000, 50 from as a co-creation, and the 50 from the fund. At this period, we will be looking at funding up to 7 projects. And if our projects in Kenya are very impressive, I guess we could be looking at supporting more. But for now, we're looking at 5 to 7 projects for Kenya. For the selection criteria, we're looking at initiatives or programs that have a sector private coordination, or is it cooperation? Because some of the programs are NGO driven, but would need to have a private sector partner in that consortium, or they may be 100% private sector driven. We're also looking at, of course, engaging youth. The initiative should be looking at decent jobs for youth. Like I said, with a focus on women, and we are hoping that the women would take 50% of that of the jobs that are created through this initiative. It is important that as we look at the selection criteria, we are looking at a very clear pathway of how those jobs will be created, and that's one of the things that we'll be looking at as we look at your work and what you're proposing. We will want to see how that happens in the period that you propose. We are now working in Nigeria. We've had applications already selected for Nigeria. In fact, Nigeria is already, Uganda. Applications have been selected for Uganda, and we are already in the second phase of that in Uganda. So there's a call for proposal coming up for Uganda soon. And then there's at concept stage, we have Nigeria and Egypt. And currently, as a core number three, we have a call for proposal for Sudan, South Sudan, Jordan, and Kenya. So that's what is on the ground right now. And I hope that if there are any questions, we'll be able to handle them at the end of the session, where we'll have the question and answer session. So now I'll invite my colleague, Beatrice Wangari, who is our senior researcher, to take us through the findings, the research findings that we've been working on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Wamoyo. My name is Beatrice Wangari, and I'm the one who's been the in-country researcher for Challenge Fund for Youth Employment. I'm going to take us through some of the findings that we have come across and validated as we carried out the scoping. First of all, I'm going to let you know that we've had 2 work streams while carrying out the scoping, one of which is the in-country research. The second one is the portfolio development. The in-country research has been responsible for carrying out a desk study to just understand what are the challenges of youth employment in Kenya, talking to key informants to get detailed information from the ground. And this has helped us understand what are the root causes of unemployment in Kenya. We have also done, as part of the scoping, carried out some youth aspiration sessions, which will be presented by VSO, and that has informed our research. So in the course of research, we have been able to talk to the private sector, we have been able to talk to institutions of higher learning, vocational training centers, and the youth organizations that have given us very in-depth information on what is happening around the challenges of youth unemployment. And we'll be presenting that in a short while. Under the portfolio development, which has been headed by Wamoyo, the key role for portfolio development has been to establish a pipeline. And I believe that's why we are all here, because part of it has been to develop and find out who could be possible partners who could be able to give us the results of the objective of this fund, that is creating decent youth employment opportunities for our youth in Kenya. That the in-country research began in October all through November and December, which has come to a conclusion, and the report is available on our website. The end of this combination of the 2 work streams is what is giving us what we are having as a call for proposals. And that's why we are here today. And I believe by the end of this, we will be able to present the eligibility criteria and other requirements that will go along when it comes to applications. So I'm going to invite Helen to take us through some of the recommendations that they found when they talked to the youth, when they conducted youth aspiration sessions, and just give us what it feels like from the youth. This is directly from the youth. And over to you, Helen. Helen Magina.
Maybe she has some connection issues. I would propose we continue. When she comes back on, we can try again.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yes. So just as Beatrice has said, these are the recommendations that came out of our youth aspiration sessions. So one of the recommendations that young people presented was to offer platforms and to support of reskilling and upskilling to match the job market. And this came about as they expressed failure for the education systems, the training opportunities that they had to really give them the relevant skills and practical skills that they needed in terms of seeking employment and getting into employment. So this is a critical area for them so that the barriers when it comes to skilling and the mismatch in skilling is addressed. And this offering this through training institutions, but also having employment opportunities that give them the opportunity to continuously upskill so that they remain relevant within the sector, but also achieve personal development as well. The other strong area of recommendation was to provide mentorship, apprenticeship, and internship opportunities for learning and experience. And this resulted in young people being able to express the lack and gap in this area. So not having people to mentor them, to guide them in how to run their businesses, opportunities such as internships that have been provided that don't really provide learning opportunities, but are used by employers and other people to fill a gap. So they felt that there needs to be those specific opportunities that give them personal development and growth, but also just give them practical job learning experience and continuous learning within a working environment. And that also enables them to really achieve the personal development, but to also enable them to attain their career aspirations and access more opportunities. So the other recommendation was life skills and resilience, and that is taking into recognition the frustrations that young people have faced in terms of accessing employment or really not having a conducive working environment, and having that opportunity and support within the different communal structures, in the learning institutions in the community and within the employment environment to really build their confidence and to really give them the ability to adapt to changing environments and changing situations so that they become more resilient and more adaptive to different situations, and particularly enabling them to have that confidence to take up employment opportunities. So we also had creating an enabling business environment for startups and government systems and policies in the areas the youth are passionate in. And that's taking into consideration really how the difficulties in starting a business and the having a very difficult processes of getting permits, of seeking support, seeking information on the processes that should be taken, and supporting our stakeholders really having that ability to shorten and make that process more friendly, particularly for young people, and giving them information, resources, and the ability to be able to have good opportunities to start up businesses. Also, building climate resilient agribusiness ventures was an area that was mentioned within the aspiration sessions, and that's changing, taking into consideration the shift of moving towards a green economy, and also addressing other climate-related issues that have really interrupted their ability to engage in agribusiness, or climatic conditions that affected their engagement in other ventures as well. And they're also recognizing the fact that this opportunity could present an area of growth or innovation for them, and for them to engage in and bring in new ideas and build business ideas around that as well. So when we look at social accountability, advocacy, and civic education to rights entitlement, which includes need for reforms in the education sector, tackle exclusion due to corruption, nepotism, and tribalism, And this looks at in areas in terms of access to employment where opportunities have been given to other people and denied young people who deserve it because of corruption, nepotism, or tribalism, advocating for a safer working environment with conducive and decent working conditions, allowing them to work to the best of their ability, but also that recognizes their rights as employees or as business owners so that they're able to maximize the opportunities that they have as well. And it's just creating accountable systems within the public and the private sector for more engagement in addressing those particular challenges, but having more accountable structures towards addressing the challenges that young people face in accessing employment. So yeah, there are also recommendation to support youth to start up their business, scaling up and creating linkages with government agencies for other development services. And that would be also in addition to the creation of hubs to be able to provide those services, but more government involvement towards providing BDS services and really supporting young people within the rural areas and urban settings to access particular business coaching and development and financial services for growth. Then there's also the establishment of information hubs for youth to access job and training opportunities. So this still comes out as a big gap, access to information, as much as most opportunities have been digitalized. Information is still a barrier to most of the young people. So be it access to the internet, information only shared to particular groups of people, but also looking in terms of inclusivity, young people with disability, not having the right communication or information channels to really access information on training, on employment, or even opportunities that have been presented as well. So diversifying the way we deliver information, but also recognizing the different categories or identities of young people and how we can improve communication and information for them as well. Then other recommendation is diversifying investment in emerging sectors, and this include creative sector, the arts, the sports, virtual working, agriculture, and agribusiness. And this is the areas that young people have interested, but they have identified as emerging potential for them as well. And also taking into recognition the projection of where work will be in the future and also opportunities that are presenting themselves as well. And then we also had a key recommendation in terms of training employers and the government to create inclusive and ensure inclusive infrastructure in the jobs as well. And that's looking at gender issues, employers and the government being able to provide additional social services that would promote the employment of young women, of persons with disability, and really having those particular mainstreaming guides or policies that would allow different agencies and employers to really develop inclusive structures and promote inclusion within their work environment so that marginalized groups or excluded groups are able to access employment and have an inclusive infrastructure that supports their employment. And then finally, the final recommendation would be providing a working environment that is safe, inclusive, and supports personal development, which was linked to their aspiration in regards to decent work and really more recognizing the rights of young people in employment and safeguarding policies within employment to ensure that they're safe and protected from harassment and exploitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll hand over.
All right, thank you very much, Helen, for that very clear presentation. I appreciate what Helen and the VSO team has done because it has come to validate a lot of the work that we did through research and confirming the same, that yes, there is really need to create employment opportunities for our young people. On the next slide, I'm going to present how applicants will propose, how are they going to create or improve or match employment opportunities that are there. Some of the challenges that we're finding, and when we're talking about creating new jobs, improving and matching, is because we are all aware in our Kenyan economy that we are having a big challenge when it comes to creating new jobs. So applicants in this forum who are going to be successful are going to show us how they're going to create new jobs, and particularly with an emphasis on women. There are also some of them, again, will show us how they will improve existing opportunities. Why do we talk about improvement? Because we know that decent work has been a challenge for many young people. We are having very many young people that are employed, but in decent employment opportunities where they're not able to meet even the minimum wage or the living wage, or they're working in very harsh conditions. When it comes to matching, as Helen has mentioned in the course of their youth aspiration sessions, that we have a mismatch in terms of supply and demand. We have some young people out there who have qualifications for work. On the other hand, we have a platform where jobs are found, but the two have a mismatch in terms of what the labor market is demanding of the youth and how they have been trained or the skills that they have. So applicants are going to propose how they're going to handle these three items in terms in the endeavor to ensure that the opportunities created and are sustainable. And I think that will come along later when we are taking you through the application process. So I'm going to look at some of the challenges that we came across and what are the possible opportunities that we found that would offer opportunities for our youth when it comes to creating new jobs. Some of the challenges that we found is that our economy is not creating enough jobs. I think we all are cognizant of this fact that we have a very high number of new entrants into the labor market, and hardly is our economy absorbing, especially the formal economy is not absorbing even up to 10%. So that becomes a major challenge for our young people, because then it means every year we are churning out many graduates from different institutions, but we are hardly absorbing a substantial number. So that number continues to pile up each and every year. Then with the economic downturn that we have seen, especially with the COVID, the pandemic, is that we have had very many job losses, and very many of our young people, again, have lost their jobs, not just young people, but even the older generation. So then that becomes a challenge, because already we are not absorbing them enough. And now when it comes to losing more jobs, then the number becomes bigger at the end of the day. Then from our research, we found out that traditional organizations are not able to absorb the numbers. And what comes out strongly is that the informal sector and the new business models then becomes the way, that's where we have to look at if we have to absorb enough of our youth people in the work. Yeah. Another challenge is that we have very many startups, small startups, businesses in Kenya, but they hardly survive. We are having a very high number die within the first or the second year. That becomes a challenge, because then if we are counting on the startups to give us employment opportunities for our people, and then they die within a very short time, it means that then that remains a big challenge for our economy. So in this regard, we have found that despite the challenges, we still have opportunities, because the informal sector is growing. That is majorly micro, the small and the medium businesses. And if they are well supported, they are able to give job opportunities for young people and others. Another opportunity we found is supporting replicable and scalable businesses and operational models. Some of these business models are the ones that are, for example, able to create a wider ecosystem that creates sustainability at the end. So that's a big opportunity for our young people, especially, for example, in the agribusiness and other sectors, because if we're able to support replicability and scalability, then definitely we are creating new opportunities. We are also looking at projects that have high volumes and very high potential. This could we could look at agribusiness, and we could also look at manufacturing sectors, because we are saying that the numbers that we need to absorb for our young people is really huge. We also have a new market demand like the e-commerce. We have seen, for example, during this pandemic, that digital solutions have come in very handy for many businesses and even for many employers, and they are creating a new wave. It's like we are in the fourth industrial revolution, where the e-commerce and the digital solutions are becoming very handy, and our young people especially are very interested in working in the digital space. So that gives us a very big opportunity for our young people, and it doesn't limit them because they can work from anywhere. Location then becomes not anything. We don't have that barrier of transferring the skill, because they're able to work from anywhere. Businesses are able to be supported from whichever area of the country they are. The next issue that we are looking at and how we are challenged is improving. I remember Wamoyo mentioned that we are seeking to create decent youth employment opportunities. And when it comes to decency, we have mentioned that we are having very many jobs that are indecent in many ways, especially when we look at the Sustainable Development Goal number 8. And so when it comes to improve, some of the challenges that we found is that most of the informal wage contracts are not decent. And remember, we have said that our formal economy is creating less than 10% of the new jobs created in the country as a whole. So we are finding out that most of the jobs created are in the formal sector, and most of the informal wage contracts are decent. That gives us a challenge, because then we are looking at issues of sustainability and decent working conditions, and even things like social protection that are lacking in some of these contracts. We're also having very many jobs that are earlier classified as formal, moving into becoming informal contracts, either through subcontracting or outsourcing. That becomes a big challenge, because then it means that a job that was formal, when it becomes informal, the conditions may change, and most likely to the negative. The other challenge when it comes to improving the working conditions is lack of skilling opportunities and also proof. We have some of our young people that have self-trained themselves, and they have the right skill and they can deliver the work, because they do not have proof. Maybe they didn't go to an institution, they are self-taught, and they lack that certification. Then it becomes a big problem when it comes to transferring that skill, or even somebody trusting that they are able to deliver using the skill that they have. Most of our small businesses, again, are having a big challenge when it comes to accessing credit and funding opportunities, and that this limits them in terms of growth. I know that we have very many institutions that are offering funding for SMEs and startups, but that still remains a big challenge because of sometimes the requirements, the high collateral requirements that our SMEs are not able to provide. And especially when it comes to youth startups, then they have a limitation in terms of having collateral and other requirements when it comes to funding. What opportunities do we see in this issue? One, active business development services. When we look at access to finance, supporting our SMEs to improve the financial and social sustainability. This is possible because we, as I have mentioned, we have very many institutions, NGOs, and even investors that are willing to provide finances for small businesses and startups. Some sectors also, like and business models, are integrating sustainability principles. For example, some of the aggregation models that we have seen come up a lot, especially in agriculture, they are improving sustainability of some of these business ecosystem, which is giving opportunities for our youth. And I'm sure we will be able to discuss this a little more when we talk about the requirements and some of the possible projects that we'll be looking at. We have seen a lot of improvement when it comes to government supporting, either in terms of policy and in terms of the projects that the government is supporting towards the youth. This could be either in terms of access to finance. We have seen a lot of funding that goes to the young project for the youth. We have the youth fund. We also have the minimum policy that is seeking to improve the working conditions in terms of minimum wage. We have also an opportunity when it comes to one person holding more than one job. And this could mean that they are capable then of having multiple income streams, because a person is capable of holding more than one job. The job itself, maybe the first one or the second one, may not be able to give you even the minimum wage, but because of the ability to hold multiple jobs, then there is an opportunity there to improve the conditions and the decency of the overall income that one is able to earn. We have seen a lot of efforts on certification of technical skills. We have many institutions, either through our government institutions like NITA, that have come to help certify the technical skills. And one of the benefits of certification is that it creates easily transferable skills and also sustainability. So when our young people are certified, then it is easy to transfer that skill to any other location. And it's also, it gives a possibility of creating sustainability when it comes to employment. The last thing I'll talk about is matching. And I recall the VSO report that says that we are having a mismatch when it comes to what the labor market demands skills our young people are having. So we are having youth skills and interests that are not matching or aligning with existing labor possibilities. And that becomes a very big challenge, because then what happens to our youth is that they are forced to either take any available opportunity that they find, not because what they aspire to do, but it's because it's what is available and life needs to move on. The other challenge is that we are having lack of information and networks. In as much as we are in the digital era and the information era, we still have lack of information and networks for our young people when it comes to finding where the vacancies are, finding the information that is required for decent or for certain job requirements, especially with the disparity that there is between the urban and the rural, and the marginalized communities. So that still remains as a big challenge. And we have seen that most of the youth from villages are having a disadvantage. You compare, we still have that like digital divide or information divide where the youth from marginalized areas are not able to have access to information. And that's also, we have lack of opportunities of any, what are the vacancies that are available for our youth. So that limits their capability either to be able to apply for those jobs in good time, or even the requirements that they need. So in this case, we see a lot of opportunities, because currently, and it's an ongoing and a development, having many active platforms that are supporting matching demand and supply. For example, initially we only had like a corporate organizations being able to offer platforms where young people can log in, or anyone can log in and find out what are the vacancies that are available. But we have seen a big development in these when it comes to technical skills, especially. Now we are having platforms that are supporting technical skills in terms of finding vacancies. And so the people who have the skills, and they have very good skills, they're able to connect with people who need their services, and this becomes very easy and becomes a big opportunity, especially for our young people. We also have seen a lot of good development when it comes to involvement of the industry experts when it comes to curriculum development and design. This supports a lot in bridging the gap between the mismatch that we are finding in terms of what the labor market is demanding and what our youth are having in terms of their skills and the capabilities that they have. So a lot of mentorship and traineeship, and this has been again emphasized through the VSO report, that this is coming in a lot in terms of bridging that mismatch that we have found in the labor market. I know our research is very detailed and in-depth, But because of time, I will not present beyond there, and much of it can be found in our detailed report. So back to you, Wamoyo.
Thank you very much, Beatrice and Helen, for that very clear presentation on the key observations in Kenya. Before I invite Malo to discuss the digital window, the BDS, we would like to let you know that we'll have a question and answer session at the end, and you can start to post your questions on the chat. I'll be on the lookout so that I note the kind of questions that you have or the questions that you will have that can be addressed after Malo makes her presentation. So over to you, Malo.
Yes, thank you, Wamoyo. And hello all. So my name is Marlo Rijk. I work for Palladium. I'm based in the Netherlands, and I'm the call coordinator for the upcoming call for concept notes for Kenya. Hence, I'm in the position to tell a little bit more about the application process and the window we've had in mind. All the information you've received in this hour so far is very important for us because it sort of reflects what we think are some very important barriers, but also opportunities for youth employment in Kenya. And I know the people present in this call today have some good ideas and understand these problems very well. And we just want to sort of recap on that to make sure that what we see reflected in the project ideas coming in is also in line with sort of our vision for the fund, and especially in Kenya. So let's talk a bit more about the practicalities of the call. And of course, this call is specific for one of the windows. We just want to sort of explain the thinking behind that. So over the past 40 minutes, you've heard a lot about a variety of problems and a variety of thematic areas that we think is important. However, for us as a challenge fund for youth employment, we sort of have to zoom in on specializations and focus areas. And that's why we decided, okay, let's think about 2 focus areas that we think are very suitable for youth employment. They have confirmed market demand, they have the interest of youth, and it is something that can be solved over the course of 2 to 3 years, which is what the duration of the envisaged project is. So we looked at the need to invest in productive sectors, either directly or sectors that support other sectors to perform better. And that's why we arrived at one of the windows, at least, which is the Digital Business Development Services window. Of course, BDS can explain it a bit. We use it in 2 different versions. We talk about services and we talk about skills. But in the end, we are looking for project ideas that use digital technologies to either run their own business or to help other businesses and organizations perform better. So this window is going to be open to a variety of sectors. So we don't want to exclude sectors. We just think the key conditions should be that business models are based on technology. And that any project ideas brought forward will actually help to create jobs for young people, direct jobs. And you can see that we talk about some examples here. There's a bit more information in the call for solutions that you've all received as well. You can access this on the website as well if you want to read a bit more on all of this, because it's quite important to sort of understand what we're looking for. I think that the essence of what we're saying in this window is, as long as you have a good idea for a digital business model or a digital service or technology that you can offer, and it creates employment for youth and young women in specific as well, we're open to it. So yeah, I think if you have a very specific question and you think, well, would my project idea be eligible, do send us a message and we can always have a look and get back to you on that specific. But I can imagine that we don't want to talk about that right now in this session. So let's talk about a bit more practical things. The second window is scaling up green growth jobs. We have a separate webinar diving into the definition here next week on Tuesday. So right now I'm just going to skip this description for now. Of course, some project ideas might fall into both categories, which is fine, and which we even are enthusiastic about, because it combines two of the topics we're interested in. And those are eligible, and projects can just sort of select which window would be most suitable. However, if you have a project idea that doesn't fit in any of those two windows, then it also won't be eligible for the Kenya Call for Concept Notes. So that's a bit of a tough decision we have to make, looking at sort of the landscape we see. And we see plenty of good ideas. We just have to sort of limit it for our fund from a practical perspective. So these thematic areas are the first eligibility criteria. Then we have 4 more basic selection points. So the first distinction we want to make is we are open for projects that can cover the informal and the formal sector. So we don't exclude the informal sector. However, we need the jobs to be created to be either direct employment or what we call semi-employment or semi-self-employment. And that refers mostly to sort of agency-style business models that you see happening. And of course, decency is a very, very key requirement for us. So we would want to see that reflected irrespective of the type of employment. Maybe just to give a bit of an example of what we see as an agency style model. In Uganda, one of our awarded applicants is Healthy Entrepreneurs. They've set up a model whereby they provide agents with sort of small healthcare packages that they can sell on their own and make a margin on. So these entrepreneurs are technically self-employed, but they use the business model of the overarching company to make a living for themselves. So for us, that's very important, and because it sort of provides a decency and sustainability to self-employment, and we hope to see examples like that in Kenya too. The second eligibility criteria is the business development stage. We are only looking for tested and piloted concepts. So that means that lead applicants need to be in business for at least 2 years and are sort of ready to scale. So you have a very good idea, you've tested it in the field, and you think, well, we can do this, we can scale this up, but we need additional funding for that and support. That's the type of projects we would love to see come in. Then on the lead applicants, Beatrice already talked about how there's quite a rich landscape of organizations in Kenya working in an entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're open to NGOs, including international ones, and the private sector. All of these actors can be lead applicants, but if an NGO is the lead applicant, we would like to see at least one company in the consortium. And that reflects to sort of the impact way to employment, whereby we want to see confirmed labor demand. So youth actually being onboarded by companies in the consortia, rather than sort of a hypothetical placement after training. And then the last one, the minimum number of jobs. In the beginning, we talked about how the Challenge Fund has a minimum job creation of 250. That's sort of overall for all countries. However, we set specific targets per country, and for Kenya, we set the target at 500. Also because of the focus we have on the agency style models. And of course, the 50% women applies here as well. Okay, so that's shortly about the eligibility criteria. And this sort of gives you an impression, well, is my project ID eligible at all, before we sort of dive into the details. To quickly talk about the timeline. Today and next week we have these webinars to inform prospects or people who are thinking about applying. Today and in the webinar next week, we're going to talk a little bit about the type of content we already want to see. But we're making some final changes to the concept note template, which will come online next week, Friday. And from that moment onwards, you'll have about 5 weeks to prepare the content for the concept note, with the deadline being February 26. The concept note is sort of a mini version of a full proposal. And what we are doing is sort of assess the basic eligibility of concept notes, looking at the conditions I talked about in the previous slide, and also at how convinced we are of the idea, its decency and suitability for youth and women. So that takes us about 4 to 6 weeks overall. And then we invite a selection of applicants to submit a full proposal, which is a bit more work, of course, and that's why it's only a small share that gets invited for the full proposal phase. So Wamoyi already mentioned that, you know, the rough target is 5 to 7 projects per country. Can be more in Kenya if we get a lot of nice projects, but it means that we won't invite more than double that for the full proposal phase. And the requirements are quite strict. So we urge everyone to really very strongly think about the fit your business idea has with the windows we have and the eligibility criteria. And then after the full proposal phase, we still need a few more weeks to sort of go through the evaluation. And it means that it's a relatively lengthy trajectory of about 4 to 5 months before award. So that's good to know. Okay, see the time is running short, and what I would propose we do is I'm going to continue the sort of the short recap on the application process. We will have time for a few questions. If you have other questions, do please ask them in the chat. We're going to look at it after the session, and we're going to send a reply with frequently asked questions anyway. So your question is going to be answered. Okay, so how exactly does the application process work? I already mentioned that we have a template that's being updated, and that will be shared next week, Friday. We work with 2 versions. We ask people to fill in a Word version of the template and to also upload a digital version. And it's going to be the digital version that makes it easy for us to sort of compare and check if you meet the eligibility criteria. For you to access those documents, you need to fill in the eligibility check on the website. That's going to be a standardized form that's made available from tomorrow onwards. But like I said, the template will take a few days. So just keep watching the website next week, and we'll inform you once it is available and send an email on that. The application form for the concept note asks about a variety of topics. So it's about business or company information, who is in the consortium, a bit of a description of your project ID, and a very high-level financial proposal. And then we mean just some estimates of the total budget, some key costs and how you divide it across activities and across years. We don't need very detailed answers, and the concept note also doesn't allow for that. So we advise you to be quite sharp and short here. I think I added a bit more detail here. Yeah, so we have 5 sections. Most of the questions allow for 250 words per answer. I wanted to quickly talk about this so you can start thinking about that in the coming week if you want, in preparation for the formal template. So the eligibility declaration covers the topics I just talked about. That's just some checkboxes. Lead organization profile and consortium information. Just talk about the organization, number of employees, experience, etc. And then section 4 is really the key part here. So we want to see a strong project pitch. We want to see you refer to the challenges your project ID will be solving, which our colleagues talked about earlier in this meeting. And we want to see concrete targets for the number of jobs created. And that has to be split across create, match, and improve, as well as across employment and sort of the semi-self-employment we talked about. Yeah, so let me leave it at that. I just want to recap on some key questions that get asked a lot, so maybe jumping the gun for your question. But some key things that are very relevant for you to know is that grant funding from other donors can count as the co-funding you bring in. And what's also eligible is in-kind support from the applicants of the consortium, loans and equity. For Kenya, the minimum contribution for the Challenge Fund is 200,000 euros for a minimum of 500 jobs. We don't have a maximum at the moment, depends on the strength of your project and the volume of jobs created. So we're still pretty flexible for Kenya. Projects are envisioned to be 2 to 3 years, and we're looking for decent jobs, which means at least 6 months, but of course, preferably longer, depending on the nature of the job you're going to create. And there's going to be a second funding round for Kenya, probably a year and a half from now. We talked about the lead applicants. So both private companies, NGOs are eligible as long as there is a private sector entity in the consortium. And if you want, you can be part of multiple consortia as long as you can sort of convince us that the available capacity is there to handle a project, should all of those be awarded. I think I would want to leave it at that and hand over to Wamoyo for selecting some key questions. Thank you. I think you're on mute, Wamoyo.
Sorry, yes, I am on mute. Fortunate. Yes, thank you very much for that clear presentation on the digital BDS window. I believe a lot is clear now, but we do have a few questions, and I will pick a few. We have questions from Lesotho, who wants to know the total cost per job. Maybe Malo, you can handle that. And I think the other question that would go with that is the minimum amount is being discussed as 200,000 euros. So they're asking what is the maximum. So you can answer those as I pick up others.
Yeah. The costs per job are relatively flexible. I mean, if you calculate back at the fact that our minimum contribution is 200,000 euros, which is maximum 50%, it means that the minimum budget size should be 400,000 up to 2 million, creating 500 jobs. So, that sort of gives you a ballpark figure. On the jobs, I can already tell that if we look at the value for money, we do simply divide the budget by the number of jobs created, and then we look at the nature of those jobs. How sustainable are they? Is there also an indirect impact? And based on that, we make a decision if we feel that this figure is really value for money. So it depends per case. And I think that the maximum value question was already answered, I see in the chat.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Okay. So Antonio wants to know if an organization can participate in more than one window and as a lead applicant.
Yeah, you can. That's all right. So basically you can choose multiple, you can submit multiple proposals, and that can be across the windows as well. As long as we are convinced of the capabilities of the organization to actually realize projects in both windows.
Yeah. So there's a need for clarity on the co-funding, because since we've talked about 10 to 50%, they want to understand how that works, and what's the decision whether it is 10 or 50, and also how does it work in terms of the amount that the budget, the budget of the project. So you can just clarify that a little.
Yeah. So indeed, the share that we co-fund is 10 to 50%. So anything in between. with sort of the minimum being 10% and the maximum being 50%. So that means that an applicant is free to include a variety of other sources of funding. In the other countries, we see that it can be other grants, it can be equity, it can be loans, it can be a small share of in-kind support as well. Yeah, so basically what we're saying is you need to definitely match the value of the budget that we provide with alternative financing. So that's, I think that's maybe the sort of the rule to keep in mind. If that's done and agreed, you know, then you're technically eligible. And maybe a small note on the sort of the value for money. We mostly look at the cost of our grant per job as well. So we look at the budget that you would expect from Challenge Fund for Youth Employment, divide that by the number of jobs created.
Sure. On the question on the company or private sector being part of the consortium, I believe you've talked about that, but this is more for the NGOs. If the NGO is a lead partner, then we need to have a private company as part of the consortium.
Yeah.
I think the question is how, I don't know whether that's not clear or whether the question is how the consortium happens, but I believe that would be up to them to decide how the consortium happens. It's a requirement that if you're an NGO, then you need to have a private sector company working with you, and you can decide how that works as a consortium.
Yeah, indeed. So I see a question coming in on the minimum legal wage in Kenya. What we work with is the living wage indicator. So if you have a look at the highlight report that we published on our website, you can see what that is for Kenya. That wage depends on if we're talking about a single person or a person with a family, and it also depends on whether you're based in an urban area or a rural area. So we want to strongly suggest to have a look at that, and that's the minimum wage for eligible proposals.
Yes, that's right. The question on criteria for selection was handled before. There's still a question on what the criteria for the concept will be. What criteria will be used to select the initiatives, you know, as we go through the concept papers?
Yeah. So basically, we look at a variety of things, but it comes down to the 4 topics that Wamoyo, you mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. So we look at the pathway towards realizing employment. Are we convinced that the business plan you have and the partners that you put together in the consortium can realize the number of jobs you're talking about? Is that market demand there? To sort of confirm that. And then alternatively for us, it's very important to hear strongly your arguments for how you would include women, how you would include young people in specific, and how you would realize decent jobs that last also after the Challenge Fund's funding sort of ends. So those are 4 topics that are very important. So the logic or the pathway, your youth engagement strategy, your gender inclusiveness, and the decency of work. So those would be really the evaluation criteria for us in the concept mode stage.
There's a question which I think I'm not quite understanding. They're asking if the grant-funded project that Challenge Fund will be co-funding with ends before the 2-year time frame.
And that's all right. If the grant has not been earmarked for other things and it's really onboarded to cover part of the project costs, it's no problem if it ends early, as long as it still keeps our own grant contribution to 50%.
Yes, sure. Yeah. The criteria for the in-kind contribution?
There's a bit more in the FAQ on the website, but basically what we're saying is it has to be sort of at market value and a reasonable assignment of costs. So that means that companies cannot just assign costs they would have already made as in-kind costs, but the costs that are sort of made by a company for the specific project that you're proposing. But I would suggest to read the FAQ on the website on that specific question as well.
Yeah. Okay, then I think there was a question on whether the company is the one that confirms the job opportunities. There's a question by Corinne.
Yeah, so the company doesn't necessarily have to be the one to confirm the actual market demand. What we are looking for is sort of a plausible explanation on how the youth involved in the project you propose will have lasting jobs. Them being employed by one of the partners in the consortium is one of the options and a very feasible one. But if you can think of other solutions, and for example, you can have a letter of intent or other options with partners that express their willingness to employ youth, that works for us. And the reason for that is that we're not looking for a sort of project-based employment, that if a project ends and an NGO is no longer involved or doesn't have the budget anymore, that jobs cease to exist. So that's why we are sort of looking for the private sector involvement part of things.
Okay. There's a question on, we had some conflicting information on slide 7 because we talked about 100,000 as a minimum, and then we talked about 200,000. So I think the Evans is wondering which is a figure. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the last one. So for the CFYE in general, the minimum is 100K for 250 jobs. For Kenya, we've increased the number because of the focus on agency models and the sectors. And we believe it's possible to create more jobs than, for example, South Sudan.
Yeah, exactly. Now, on the question of jobs, we've talked about creating jobs, sustaining jobs, and expanding jobs. So I think let's also, your question has been answered, or do you still want more information on that? Because it's asking about sustaining jobs that were lost during the COVID period, whether those have been considered when we look at the jobs that are created.
They are. We consider them to be part of the improve category. Yeah. And if you can make a very strong argument, that those jobs would have been completely lost, otherwise we can see if we can move some of it to create. But in essence, we see sustaining as sort of improving jobs that were there, but we're having some trouble because of slowing down market demand. But they are eligible and they are part of sort of the 500 minimum.
Yes. I think we are. Do we have any more? We have one more question. Let's see. I think we're done with questions for now.
Yeah.
And we're time barred. So if there are any other questions, we'll be happy to answer them through the partnership email that you have. So feel free to send your questions there. And we also have the frequently asked questions on our website. So also visit our website to see the response that we have given to some of the questions that you may have. And feel free to continue talking to us as you have the partnership email that you could use for that.
Yeah. You'll be receiving a different link if you would want to attend the webinar next week as well. I mean, the only difference between the two webinars would be sort of the focus on explaining what each window covers or not. And it allows, of course, for some window-specific questions as well. We will be sharing the recording of this session with everybody present, and also share sort of the slide deck and some answers to the questions we've discussed today. So everybody sort of has that as a backlog.
Yes, and to answer Sarah's question, we are looking at jobs beyond 500. So we even if it is a consultancy arrangement that is giving the decent jobs that are 500 plus, we are okay with that. You qualify.
Yeah.
Okay. So we come to the end of the webinar, and we've gone past with 9 minutes. We had hoped to finish in exactly 1 hour. Thank you very much for your patience, and we look forward to seeing you on Tuesday next week for the second window that will be looking at the green growth jobs. Thank you so much, and once again, we'll continue working with you as we build this to the next level. Bye-bye, and thank you, team, for Marlo, Beatrice, Helen, for the presentations, and for being very clear as you made the clarifications of what we are doing and for answering the questions. Asante sana.
Thank you, Amoyo.